Restart the free flow of commerce through the Strait of Hormuz under the umbrella of Project Freedom.
On May 4th, 2026, the United States forced open the Strait of Hormuz under fire. Iran threw everything it had: cruise missiles, drones, fast boats, mines, and a single American-flagged cargo ship sailed through it all. Tehran's most feared weapon was never a weapon at all. The operation was called Project Freedom. 15,000 service members, guided missile destroyers forming a moving wall of steel around commercial traffic. More than 100 land and sea-based aircraft, multi-domain unmanned platforms, undersea assets, electronic warfare systems, all of it converging on a chokepoint only 29 nautical miles wide, a corridor so narrow that its navigable shipping lanes measure just 2 miles in each direction. For weeks before that moment, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had sealed off the world's most critical energy artery with mines, cruise missiles, drones, and fast attack craft, trapping more than 1,550 commercial vessels and an estimated 22,500 mariners inside the warm, suffocating waters of the Persian Gulf. 20 million barrels of oil per day, roughly 1/5 of every drop the planet consumes, held hostage by a single regime's threat. Then, Project Freedom punched through. But this operation was not merely about escorting cargo ships through dangerous waters. What unfolded in the narrow, contested waters of Hormuz on May 4th may have permanently rewritten who controls the most important energy corridor on Earth, and the country that stands to lose the most is not Iran. As dawn broke over the Strait of Hormuz on the morning of May 4th, the corridor was anything but quiet. The guided missile destroyers took position around the merchant vessels, and the IRGC answered with everything it had, rehearsed for decades. According to Reuters, the US said it destroyed 6 Iranian small boats and intercepted multiple Iranian cruise missiles and drones, all launched directly at the ships under American protection. Picture the scene. Guided missile destroyers cutting through the hazy, sun-scorched waters of Hormuz near Musandam, Oman. Grey steel leviathans, whose radar arrays never stopped sweeping the horizon, scanning for the first twitch of an Iranian launch. Circling low above the shipping lane, like armoured birds of prey, AH-64 Apaches and MH-60 Seahawks hunted Iranian fast boats skimming the surface, their thermal sensors picking up engine heat from miles away, their gun systems already locked before the IRGC crews even knew they had been found. Above them, more than 100 aircraft formed an invisible canopy of fire. Fighters, surveillance platforms, electronic warfare jets, saturating every frequency the IRGC could use to coordinate an attack, choking Tehran's nervous system from the sky. Below the surface, undersea assets prowled the dark, mine-threatened depths of the strait, scanning for the insidious explosives Iran had seeded across the seabed like a silent minefield waiting to sever the jugular vein of global energy. And through all of it, through the missiles, the drones, the fast boats, the mines, the merchant ships kept moving. Then Admiral Brad Cooper, CENTCOM commander, stepped to the microphone and delivered a statement that Tehran should have heard as a death sentence for its entire Hormuz doctrine. The IRGC has launched multiple cruise missiles, drones, and small boats at ships we are protecting. We have defeated each and every one of those threats through the clinical application of defensive munitions. The clinical application of defensive munitions. Not rage, not retaliation, clinical. Every Iranian missile swatted from the sky, every drone neutralized, every fast boat sent to the bottom of the strait by Apache and Seahawk helicopters before it could close the gap. The US did not flinch, and the merchant vessels did not stop. Hours later, Maersk confirmed what Iran was desperately trying to deny. The US-flagged vehicle carrier Alliance Fairfax had exited the Persian Gulf through Hormuz, accompanied by US military assets, without incident, crew safe. In other words, Iran threw everything it had at that corridor, and a cargo ship sailed through it anyway. But do not think this was easy, and do not think the Tehran regime has run out of weapons. The IRGC's asymmetric arsenal was not designed for a fair fight. It was designed for exactly this scenario, to turn the narrow, shallow, mine-riddled waters of Hormuz into a kill zone where even the most advanced navy on Earth bleeds for every mile. Fast attack craft capable of swarming from multiple directions simultaneously, dozens of fiberglass speedboats armed with rockets and machine guns, darting through the strait like a pack of wolves trying to overwhelm a lion. Cruise missiles hidden in mobile launchers along Iran's rugged, cave-pocked coastline, fired, then the launcher vanishes before the smoke clears. Thousands of naval mines, magnetic, acoustic, drifting, scattered across shipping lanes like silent predators sleeping on the seabed, each one patient enough to wait months for a supertanker's hull to pass overhead. And drones. Wave after wave of cheap, expendable kamikaze drones, each one costing Tehran roughly $20,000, aimed at overwhelming interceptor missiles that cost $2 million apiece. 100 drones for every missile the Navy could fire back. Iran did not need to win. It needed to exhaust. Iran even released a map claiming expanded maritime control over sections of the Strait, including portions of the UAE coastline. According to Reuters, Iranian authorities published this map as a declaration that Hormuz belonged to Tehran. And then came the words that revealed exactly how far the regime was willing to go. Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf, Iran's parliament speaker, delivered a threat that dripped with the arrogance of a regime that still believed it held the upper hand. We know well that the continuation of the current situation is unbearable for the United States, while we have not even begun yet. We have not even begun yet. Remember those words, because for Kalibaf's threat to mean anything, Iran would need to survive what Washington had already assembled inside the Strait. And what waited there was not a patrol, it was a siege engine. The force package the Pentagon assembled for Project Freedom was built to pry open a choke point and hold it open by overwhelming every layer of Iran's defense simultaneously. CENTCOM's own announcement laid it out with cold precision. Guided missile destroyers forming a moving wall of steel around commercial traffic, their weapon systems breathing in sync like a single organism with 100 arms. More than 100 aircraft providing layered overwatch from altitude, a ceiling of fire so dense that nothing Iranian could climb through it without being detected, tracked, and killed. Multi-domain unmanned platforms. AI-supported predator drones weaving a digital spiderweb across the strait, stamping the acoustic signature, thermal profile, and hull shape of every vessel breathing in those waters. Even a ship that switched off its transponder could be identified by the sound of its propeller alone. Undersea assets hunting mines in the pitch-black depths below the shipping lanes. And an electronic warfare package that Admiral Cooper described as going far beyond traditional escorting. A digital shield designed to blind Iranian targeting systems, jam their communications, and sever the windpipe between Tehran's command centers and the missiles already in the air. 15,000 service members operating in a choke point only 29 nautical miles wide. That is roughly one soldier, sailor, or airman for every 2 meters of navigable water. This was not a freedom of navigation exercise. This was the most concentrated maritime security operation in the Gulf in decades. And the doctrine behind it was surgical. Admiral Cooper made it clear that the commanders on scene had full authority to defend both their units and every commercial ship under American protection. The destroyers did not wait for Iranian missiles to arrive. Their Aegis combat systems tracked them from launch, calculated intercept geometry in milliseconds, and fired before the threat had traveled half the distance. The Apaches did not wait for fast boats to form their swarm. They hunted them individually, picking them off at the edges of the corridor before the pack could close. Every layer of Iran's arsenal met a counterlayer, purpose-built to neutralize it. Not by matching force with force, but by collapsing each threat before it could become one. In other words, Washington did not ask for permission to reopen Hormuz. It built an impenetrable corridor and dared Iran to test it. Iran tested it. And Iran lost. But here is where the story becomes even more dangerous, because officially, the ceasefire between the United States and Iran is still in effect. According to Reuters, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth insisted that the ceasefire certainly holds. And yet, in the same breath, Lieutenant General Dan Kane revealed the true scale of what Iran had been doing since that ceasefire was announced. firing at commercial vessels 9 separate times, seizing 2 container ships, and attacking US forces more than 10 times. 9 attacks on civilian ships, 2 seizures, more than 10 strikes on American forces, and Washington still calls it a ceasefire. That is not peace. That is a controlled demolition of Iran's leverage, carried out one transit at a time under the legal fiction that no war is happening. Meanwhile, the IRGC insisted that no commercial vessel had crossed the strait at all. Iranian state media denied that the US had sunk Iranian boats. Reuters could not independently verify the competing claims from either side. But Maersk, a private corporation with no reason to lie, confirmed Alliance Fairfax made it through. And then Hegseth delivered the line that should keep every IRGC commander awake at night. We know the Iranians are embarrassed by this fact. They said they control the strait. They do not. In other words, the world no longer needs to guess who controls Hormuz. The answer sailed through it on May 4th, flying an American flag. But pull back the lens from the destroyers and the drones and the burning fast boats, and a far more devastating picture emerges. Because the country absorbing the deepest wound from this crisis is not Iran. It is not even the United States. Right at the heart of this perfect storm lies a detail that changes everything. But the number that should terrify Beijing more than any missile count is buried in an energy report, and it rewrites the entire meaning of May 4th. According to the US Energy Information Administration, approximately 84% of all crude oil and condensate that moved through the Strait of Hormuz in 2024 went to Asian markets. 83% of the liquefied natural gas took the same route. China, India, Japan, South Korea. The factories and power grids of the world's most populated continent feed through this single corridor. And not a single one of those countries had a warship in the corridor on May 4th. Not one destroyer, not one helicopter, not one sailor. The oil goes east, but the military shield came from the west. In other words, the United States just spent 15,000 service members, more than 100 aircraft, and billions of dollars in naval assets to forcibly reopen an energy artery that primarily feeds China's industrial machine and Asia's power grids. And now Washington is circulating a proposal, reported by Reuters, for a new multinational maritime freedom construct, a longer-term coalition to coordinate maritime security around Hormuz, with the United States and Bahrain pushing for UN-backed action. This is the boomerang that Tehran never saw coming. Iran threatened to close the strait to punish the West, but the oil inside that strait overwhelmingly feeds the East, and the military response from the West now comes attached to a proposal for a permanent security architecture, one that would place American-led naval coordination directly around Iran's coastline, indefinitely. The vicious cycle is flawless. Iran threatens Hormuz, global shipping freezes, energy pressure rises, the US forces open the corridor, Iran fires and fails. Washington uses the failure as justification for a permanent coalition. Iran's chokepoint weapon becomes the legal and strategic foundation for the very thing Tehran feared most: a Western lock on its own front door. Even China and Russia, Iran's closest diplomatic shields, have already shown their hand. Reuters reported that both countries previously blocked a Bahrain-sponsored resolution at the Security Council, a resolution that would have legitimized military action in the Strait. But by blocking it, Beijing and Moscow did not protect Iran. They simply ensured that the corridor would be reopened unilaterally by the United States, without international constraints, without multinational oversight, and without any obligation to leave. In other words, Iran's allies did not save it. They guaranteed a worse outcome. If Iran cannot break this corridor, if every cruise missile, every drone, every fast boat continues to be swatted aside by the clinical machinery of Project Freedom, then the Tehran regime faces a reality far more suffocating than any blockade it ever imposed on the world. A permanent American-led naval architecture around Hormuz would not just neutralize Iran's strongest strategic card, it would turn the strait into a cage, one that Iran built with its own threats, sealed with its own missiles, and locked with its own arrogance. Kalibaf said Tehran had not even begun yet, but the map says otherwise. The Alliance Fairfax sailed through. Maersk confirmed it. 6 fast boats sit at the bottom of the strait, and 84% of the oil that flows through those contested waters feeds factories and cities that Iran cannot threaten and cannot reach. For nearly half a century, since the revolution of 1979, Tehran treated Hormuz as its ultimate insurance policy, the one card no American president dared to call. 47 years of strategic bluff, dissolved in a single transit on a single morning. The era in which Tehran could hold 20 million barrels a day hostage with the mere threat of closure may have ended, not with a treaty, not with a negotiation, but with a single cargo ship and 15,000 American service members who dared the IRGC to stop them. So the question now is simple, and it has only two answers. Was Project Freedom a temporary escort mission that will fade the moment the cameras turn away, or was it the first brick in a permanent wall of steel that will surround Iran's coastline for a generation? The next chapter of this crisis is already being written. Make sure you are here when it drops.